Okay, so this is my title page. We're going to go through biomechanics, stroke fundamentals. I've been with Swim Ontario for quite some time, typically doing a lot of camps and working with athletes in the daily training environment at TPASC. This is actually a picture in the middle of me doing one of the Masters camps during our OJI weekends, where I actually got to do some individual video work with athletes. And then on the left, I have a picture of myself and the Ontario Swim Academy coach, Don Burton, this year, and kind of how we have to adjust the way that we communicate, obviously through a mask, and working with athletes from a distance. But I'm also a master swimmer myself. So like my swimming career was slightly different, as you know, most master swimmers have different experiences. I didn't do the age group system, and so my main swimming career was varsity at Western when I was there for university. So when it was time to retire after 5 years, I was still wanting to keep swimming. I wasn't really ready. So it was an easy transition for me to go on into master's swimming with the London Silver Dolphins, as I did my master's in biomechanics down at Western as well. I have some pictures here where I, let me close this so I can see a little bit more of my slide. I think this was 2014, where Montreal hosted the FINA World Masters, and I hung out with the North Toronto Masters crew, although I didn't really have kind of like a affiliated team at that time because I was back and forth between London and Toronto. And then just because of the job and all the traveling and working on weekends, I'm not really like registered with a team, but I do hop between like North Toronto with Doug Vanderby, Downtown Swim Club. So I'd say swimming right now and with the Masters community is probably like the top thing that I miss the most with all these changes right now. I'm definitely looking forward to having not only the pool open just for lane swim, but to actually get swimming with a team soon myself. So as I continue through, this is what I'll be talking about. So a couple years ago, we did a bit of an analysis of our top Canadian swimmers. And when we compared them to other top international swimmers, we found that our Canadians were actually relatively good in the surface swimming, like between the flags, in their strokes, but a little bit weaker relative to the other international swimmers when it came to the starts, the turns, the underwater skills. Now that's with our top kind of competitive stream athletes. So if you as a master swimmer are really targeting that performance side of things, if you're trying to break records or really make those big improvements, and if you're already pretty satisfied with your surface swimming and your strokes, I would highly suggest working on your skills. That is going to be the easiest way to improve your time and your performance. Is, you know, improve your start, your underwater kick, your turn approaches coming off the wall. Those transition pieces will make the biggest performance improvement if you're going that track. However, for my talk today, I will be focusing more on the strokes, so going through the fundamentals of the 4 swimming strokes, and then I'm also going to touch on the freestyle turn, because based on the questions I received from the registrants, from you, I felt like this was a good starting point to talk about the actual strokes, what we do most in the pool. And then if there's interest in doing more of the skills, I'd be glad to branch out into that, whether it's today or at another time, another talk if you'd like as well. So for the 4 swimming strokes and the turn, I broke it down. We're going to kind of identify the key points and common errors that impact performance, with master swimming in mind, but just as competitive swimmers in general. What are the key points that you should be focusing on with our strokes? And then I also added a couple considerations for our athletes as we return to swimming, because our bodies obviously have been out of the pool for quite some time, and there might be certain things we can do now to prepare us for getting in the pool, whether it's safer for our body or just to get back on stroke a little bit easier. Okay, so for freestyle swimming, one of the first important points for performance is always breathing. We can't swim or train without breathing, and having a head in a neutral position in line with the spine is really important, and quite often not seen executed well in all levels of swimming. So kind of learning how to breathe with, we cue one goggle under the water, one goggle above. Now, if you see a big wave coming, or there might be certain situations where you have to lift up the head a little bit higher, that makes sense. But keeping the head in line with the water surface is ideal. And then as you finish the stroke, so this swimmer here, the left shoulder pops up higher than the right, and the head should just rotate with the shoulders for that breath. So just join the breath into the natural stroke pattern in order to kind of maintain that same stroke efficiency and not change anything in order to take a breath. And then the other point for breathing is please breathe to both sides. It's understandable if there's one side that's a little bit more comfortable, might even be stronger, and that might be part of your race strategy. When it comes to swimming the 100 free, you only want to breathe to the right because you know that you pull stronger with the left side. That's a race strategy, but when it comes to training, let's try to have breathing to both sides to balance the body and not create any imbalances. And we know that if you do breathe consecutively to the same side, your body will actually continue to rotate to that side, and you won't be swimming equally along your axis. You'll actually be tilted a little bit. So bilateral breathing can impact performance quite a lot. Hand entry is incredibly important for performance as well. So we always look for the fingers below the wrist. So this swimmer here, she's going for that entry. First thing that hits is the fingers, and then the wrist, elbow, and upper arm goes as well. And I'll be showing you the video of this as well. And then lastly, engage your back muscles throughout the pull. So this is going to be big as we kind of get back into the pull. So what we want to avoid doing is overworking our shoulders and the smaller stabilizing muscles. So as we enter with our hand overhead, we want to remember as we apply pressure during the catch that we're actually engaging our scap, we're engaging our larger muscles for the pull, and not kind of keeping our shoulder up to our ear and overusing the smaller stabilizing muscles. So you should kind of almost think about exaggerating those big movements throughout the pull so that you're engaging the proper muscles, and in the end, it will be stronger. So considerations as we get back into swimming and just in general for the long term is head position. Quite often, especially if we have a lot of swimmers in one lane, or if you're not doing the same workout as someone, we're looking up, we're looking around, we're looking at the clock, we're getting distracted. And that will create a lot of tension through the shoulders that isn't necessary. So keeping your head down in neutral at all times, unless you breathe, rotate to the side and back, is really important. You can have, especially if you're going a little bit faster, you can have more of a proud chest and that head kind of in line with the chest, similar to the bottom picture here, but still in a relatively neutral head position. And then thoracic spine mobility is really important for freestyle swimming. So we want to actually rotate through the shoulders and the T-spine rather than the hips. Sometimes you can be successful with longer distance swimming, open water swimming, having more of a hip controlled freestyle. But when it comes from shorter pool swimming, for sure, where you want control and strength in the stroke, I always suggest to have more stability through the hips and movement through the T-spine. So I think I drew lines here. So this is a perfect example. The hips are relatively stable. Naturally, as you kick, they will move side to side, but relatively along that kind of flat position. And then as you move your arms and go through the stroke cycle, the shoulders and the T-spine is where you get that rotation from. So mobility and the actual ability to rotate through the T-spine and not always drop the hip side to side is actually one of the most important things. And then core strength and control. I know Mina spoke a lot about that as well. So not just doing abs, not just being really, really strong in the core, but also understanding how to connect upper body to lower body, create that stability, and then use it to move yourself forward. Okay, this is when I'm going to switch out of the PowerPoint and go into some swimming. Oh, I need to new share. There you go. Okay, so you should be able to see this video. It's Michelle Williams from above. I'll let it go live, and then I'll slow it down. Sometimes my high quality videos don't actually show well live. So I'll talk about it kind of frame by frame. So when it comes to kind of being strong and powerful, but also protecting the shoulders, we always recommend a long kind of take up space when you do your arm recovery. So like not have a really close hand to the body, take up a little bit of space, but have your high point of the body always being the elbow. So the elbow should be the highest part of the arm recovery. So the hand shouldn't be completely straight sticking up. And then as you see, that elbow kind of controls how the hand enters. This is where I took a screenshot into the presentation before, where the fingertips enter, wrist goes down, and then the upper arm follows. And that entry point is very important because that's what carries you into a strong catch position. Sometimes if we hit the water with our hand kind of too extended and the upper arm enters ahead of the fingers, or sometimes even like the wrist is angled up, it creates a little bit more drag and we're not able to get into an effective catch position. So having that wide arm recovery with the elbow controlling it is strong for performance, but also just for protection of the shoulders, not overusing it in a long lever position. And then thinking about coming down in extension, but fingers entering first. Okay. And I clipped through to see underwater. So same thing. This is Michelle Williams on her underwater freestyle. So we can see as she enters with that left hand, fingertips enter first, and then the arm follows. And then she has a really strong catch position as she was a sprint freestyler. And as quickly as we can, we want that forearm to go as vertical as possible. So that way, as we apply pressure, we can propel ourselves forward. And if we have our hand, say, angling towards the bottom of the pool, then we'll waste a little bit of energy kind of pressing down rather than back towards our feet. So that high elbow catch is done well by Michelle here, fingertips down, coming around, and then through. Now, right here is where I was talking about kind of engaging the back for the pull. So there's going to be a point where obviously you need to reach forward, use those small stabilizing muscles to do the catch. And then when we have this tension, this is when we want to load the scap. So if you can see on the screen, kind of like the V here of the scapula, as she starts pulling back, you see that scapula shift as well. So it's not just the shoulder joint rotating, it's actually loading the larger muscles through the pull. And what I like to cue is as we kind of catch and pull, think about driving the shoulder away from the ear, creating a long neck throughout the pull. That typically allows the swimmer to kind of think about more of the upper back muscles. Okay. I'm going to go back to my slides. Okay, and the last point here, I took this video from Mina's YouTube. So Mina, I think, did the last webinar, correct, Dean? She's our dryland strength and conditioning coach. I think you're talking, Dean, but you're muted. We can't hear you naturally. But this is an exercise you can do right now on land during work at lunchtime to open up the T-spine. So you can see that her hips are stable in line. And if I replay this again, just like freestyle, we want to rotate through the T-spine, almost like she's breathing, where she has kind of that core engagement and stable hips. So that's what we're looking for. Okay. All right, so I'm going into the freestyle turn now. So the key performance points for this has a lot to do with the approach. I find working with master swimmers, we tend to see athletes swimming with their head up, kind of spotting the wall, whether it's a habit because they're used to seeing other swimmers at the wall and they're not sure if it's free to actually do a turn without hitting someone, or just because we're looking and we don't trust our visual from the bottom of the pool. But keeping your head down in neutral is always going to make your turns faster, right? We want to connect each lap, and the transition pieces is where most athletes kind of suffer and slow down rather than almost using it to increase their speed. So keeping your head down. What also helps is to plan your last breath. For competitive athletes, we try to get them to take their last breath around the flags. But also respecting that you need to hold your breath, do a turn and underwater kick and breakout. Something closer to maybe 3-4 meters out might be realistic for master swimmers, but everyone's going to be individual. Just think about where's a good spot where you can take that last breath and still get your head down for at least 2-3 strokes to spot that wall without having to look up. And then maximize the wall push. This is something I've been really working with our athletes since I started with Dean in 2014, is we tend to just make contact with the wall without actually pushing. So make sure you're actually engaging and driving yourself off the wall as effectively as you can, and not just kind of pushing into the dolphin kicks. And then other considerations is to make sure your upper body and lower body are aligned while pushing. Quite often we'll see athletes start rotating with their upper body before they even start to push. So they're almost rushing to get onto their front. Or you push and you twist at the same time. So just like these screenshots, and I'll go through the video as well. Make sure your toes, hips, shoulders, everything's angled in the same way, whether it's on your back or slightly on a lateral side position here. Everything's in alignment. You push straight as hard as you can, and then you twist during the underwater dolphin kicks. It should only take 1 or 2 kicks to get to your front with some good core engagement. But if you were to twist on the wall, you're either wasting time rotating before you push, or you're wasting energy rotating instead of pushing straight through. Okay, gonna go back to my videos. So I'll play this live of a freestyle turn, and then I'll slow it down as well. So if I stop it right here, her last breath is about 5 meters out. You can see one goggle is in the water, one goggle is out, head in line with the spine. And then, yeah, we can tell she's about 5 meters because of where the red lane rope starts. And then this is that last stroke with her right hand. As you enter with that last stroke, initiate the rotation as we come down. So actually swim in to the turn. Sometimes, and actually more often than not, we'll see that left arm be the last stroke, and so the swimmer comes and glides in and initiates the turn with the hand, like both hands at the hips, whereas it's always going to be faster to swim a little bit more effectively in and rotate through with that last stroke. So we're not gliding, we're not slowing down. And then notice the moment her feet are on the wall in contact, she's in streamline, core engaged, ready for a push. So we're not waiting to get into streamline on the wall. On and off as effectively, quickly as possible, glide for an instant and start those kicks. Now she does a lot of dolphin kicks to get to her front. If you don't want to do that long of a breakout, it's okay to do a glide and a couple of kicks just to 5-6 meters. That's fine, but we want to make sure that we're pushing as hard as we can, and then rotating after the fact.
She's a bit deeper in the push too, right? She's compared to probably some of the swimmers, maybe master swimmers, a little less depth.
Yeah, and again, I think this is Sandrine Mandel. She was extending her underwater dolphin kicks, absolutely, but she's in alignment to just go straight through, and then she actually starts kicking down. So not necessarily the best strategy, especially for master swimmers.
Well, if you're not a good kicker, it's not a good idea. If you're not a great kicker, a dolphin kicker is not the best strategy. Dan,
No.
I think I don't know if you see the question from Dan talking about getting the leg. I think you mean getting the legs over faster helps.
Should you try and drive your legs over with some speed? Absolutely. Yeah.
You told me that once. It was a really good tip. I thought it really helped me.
That's good to hear that it helped. Yeah. Sometimes we take a rest on the wall, right? So we dip down, we initiate the head coming down, and then often we'll see we'll do that little kick here and then a slow leg lift up and over. But once we initiate the turn, try to get the feet on the wall as quickly as possible. And really that's just well, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but is like, do you just use a little bit more core? What did you change to actually get around it faster on the turn?
Just trying, a little more core, but also just trying to flip the legs over faster. So I made contact with the wall quicker. Wasn't just loping over.
Loping, yeah. That's great. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. A lot of back and forth here. Okay, on to backstroke. So one of the most important things for backstroke is having a horizontal body position. And having your head back is one of the ways to ensure that your body is going to be as flat as possible. So we have kind of a natural tendency to kind of tuck the chin and kind of look on an angle towards our feet, maybe on that angle. And because of that chin or lift of the head, we'll naturally drop our hips. So we're in kind of like a seated position. And we see that a lot with age group swimmers, or even when we see some fast backstrokers where they just kind of get into that more of a vertical position. But we know that once we're vertical, we create more drag. We're not as efficient. So first things first is, like, can you do a back float? Can you get into that position with your head back, hips up, and can you be comfortable there? Just like this picture here, right? He's completely in line with the water surface. And then as you move through, you want to be able to maintain that. Now, the hip and shoulder rotation is slightly different than freestyle, where I like to see a little bit more stability through the hips in freestyle. We want to see that connection of the hip and shoulder rotation in backstroke. So I have these two images here. And I think I drew lines. Yeah. So this swimmer, same swimmer, on the left is what he was kind of naturally swimming like. And he was kind of entering and overreaching. So you can see that he's rotating well with the hips, and the shoulders are kind of along the same angle, rotating, connecting with the hips and the shoulders. But he's reaching further back with his elbow than he needs to. So even though you're on your back swimming backstroke, you don't actually have to be like reaching behind your body. All you have to do is rotate the hips, control your core, and connect the stroke with the hip rotation. Just like how the swimmer is corrected here, you're able to kind of keep that pull actually in front of your body, even though it's underwater because of that hip rotation. Now, his hand, I'd say, is actually, like, it looks almost like 90 degrees or smaller. It's a little tight. I prefer maybe a slightly open elbow position, kind of like a longer arm here. But when it comes to connecting that pull with the shoulder rotation and the hips, and keeping the hand kind of in front of the body rather than behind, and kind of putting pressure on the front of the shoulder, he does a much better job on the picture on the right. Okay. So if you are someone who does backstroke and you tend to get fatigued in the shoulders a lot or really quickly, and you're not able to do a lot of distance or volume on backstroke, it could be valuable to do some underwater video, or just to think about rotating more from the hips and keeping the hand or arm more in line with the body rather than reaching back. And then lastly, small long kick. So this goes along with that head body position. We want to kick really powerfully and strong, but we want to stay close to the water surface. So with backstrokers, we tend to see a lot of knee bend. And once we drop the feet really low, it'll bring the hips down and the head up. So kind of channeling that intensity and that energy into small kicks is really important in backstroke. And just considerations as we get back into the pool. This is actually I think the same swimmer as I showed earlier with the corrections. But this overreach during an arm entry is very, very common. And that is pretty much replicating the impingement tests that physiotherapists do for the rotator cuff. And imagine doing that every single stroke. So think about really focusing on like the roll of the hips as you enter. And I would actually recommend entering in your mind as wide as you can. So above the head for sure, but enter in a wider position with maybe your shoulder a little bit further away from your ear. So you can protect the shoulder, still get into a really powerful catch position, but not kind of create so much stress on this entry. And we know that we're not creating much propulsion in this position anyways. And then you can actually see, because he entered so narrow, his fingertips are angled down. Like this is his palm. So he's creating a lot of drag. And he'd have to kind of wait, let his shoulder and his hip rotate to the right side before he catches. So just focusing on that fast rotation and then entering maybe a little bit further out here would be better for performance for sure, and also better for your shoulders. Backstroke, I also threw approach to turn is really important. Similar to freestyle, we tend to kind of slow down and prep the turn. You essentially have two freestyle strokes. So one stroke as you rotate and one additional stroke into the turn. And I'll show that on a video. But using strong approach strokes to carry your speed into the turn is another great way to improve performance in your backstroke, and not kind of slow down as you prep that turn approach. Okay, back onto the video. Okay, so I have two swimmers I'm going to show. This is actually one of our para swimmers from Quebec City, backstroke specialist, but really great body position. This is the example I use for the head back. And you can see as he rotates through, so he's entering, the hip and the shoulder rotate through together, and then he turns his hand into a strong catch position. He has nice long arms, and then he applies all that pressure down towards his feet. And then you see that rotation as well. And the reason I like this video is because you see his approach. Now again, he's a visually impaired para swimmer. He has a pretty good turn despite that. So this is the second last stroke. His right hand is a little bit bent. So you can see his fingers are pointing across. The forearm is horizontal. He takes that last stroke. He does spot the wall a little bit, and then rotates through. Let him go. Nice small dolphin kicks into a breakout. And again, he has really good hip rotation. Now this is an old video of Kylie Maas, just from a training session, so it's actually a little bit blurry. Hopefully you can see that. But same idea. She actually has a really powerful catch position. You can see that her hip, shoulders are kind of connected through that rotation. And then she turns her palm immediately into a really strong catch, and then presses right through towards her feet. And what I like about this video is her turn. So see how deep her catch position is compared to the last athlete? So this is that one rotation stroke, but she actually almost turns it into a freestyle stroke, fingertips down. Great deep pull, and then that last stroke goes into a catch, initiating that turn right away. So we're not losing any energy on that turn approach.
Amber, the one thing I like when you watch Kylie is that when she does enter her hand and pulls and everything, very few bubbles around the hand. It's all water, you know. So that's a good thing to look for, I think.
On her backstroke?
Yeah, on her backstroke, on the backstroke stroke.
Yeah. Again, this is an old video, so I actually highly believe that her stroke is even more efficient than it is now, because she's has a pretty deep finish here. This is from maybe 2017, 2018. And she's actually doing that kind of overreach on the entry. But this is, yeah, what I absolutely love about her backstroke is she gets into a really strong catch position immediately. She doesn't delay to turn that palm. And you're right, like she slides through really, really well.
Yeah. Very little bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
All water.
All water, yeah. Okay, on to breaststroke. And we actually had a question about breaststroke kick. And I'm sure that a lot of master swimmers kind of have these concerns. So I'm going through the stroke and kind of performance pieces around that, but also I have some specific kicking videos that we'll talk about as well. So the performance points for breaststroke, we always like to see an athlete get their head down and palms down as they enter the water. So this swimmer here has already kind of gone down through, but the head is in line with the biceps, palms extended. And that way, by having the palms down, you can actually kind of press against the water, almost like in a sculling type of feel, and keep yourself higher, close to the water surface. Some swimmers that enter with the arm recovery with palms up will naturally sink down. You can't apply pressure to the water and stay high, close to the surface with your hands up. So as you squeeze your elbows in and you start that arm recovery, try to get the palms down and extend and connect with the head so that we can have that body position in alignment as close to the surface as possible, rather than that big undulation down and up. And then my second point, achieve a streamlined position every single stroke. And I put streamline in quotes because it's not like fully locked wrists over and connected hands. It's kind of thumbs together, but it's the most streamlined position in the stroke that really reduces drag, and it occurs right after the finish of the kick. So you're really driving yourself forward, and you want to reduce as much drag as possible for this stroke. And then the one thing that also kind of determines a strong breaststroker versus a not so strong breaststroker is how well you connect that kick. So as your toes are out and you finish the kick, are you actually connecting it with your glutes and your hips? So almost to kind of connect it, apply pressure through your feet, but then drive the hips forward rather than just shifting the feet back. So that's that last piece is really using the kick to extend forward. And just considerations for return to swim and kind of to, again, protect your shoulders is the head position. We really, really often see, especially for master swimmers swimming, doing that streamlined breaststroke position with the head up. This is actually a screenshot of a swimmer doing breaststroke. So not only is she kind of lower with the hands below the surface, but she's creating this whole drag from her face being forward. And then just imagine the tension on her traps, like constantly swimming with a head up breaststroke. And then quickly corrected. And if there aren't any coaches here, it only took this one video to show the athlete how much their eyes were up, to then get her head down. And you can see immediately, you know, palms are down, head is down, body is much higher on the water surface. So that's immediate performance improvement just by getting a little bit of visual feedback. And every swimmer knows what streamline is. So that is typically an easier thing to do in breaststroke, as long as you're aware that you need to do that between strokes. And then on to the kicking mechanics, positioning, loading of the knees. When it comes to performance, a narrow kick with the knees is typically ideal, but again, respecting we're master swimmers. So if you want to improve your breaststroke kick, just do a slow progression. And then again, I highlight the connecting the kick with the hip drive. So I'm going to go through the videos. Start with the swimming, and then I'll go into the kick after. So it should be this one. Okay, so what this athlete does well is as he does that arm recovery and shifts forward, he turns the palms down. And you see him get his head down right here, and then starts that kick. So as he finishes the kick, and then he brings his heels up, drives the hips forward, and he's achieving that streamlined position. Okay. Do one more stroke nice and slow. And then driving forward. And I guess the last thing I'll say just for this example, but we'll continue the conversation into the kick, is the thigh angle is also really important. So sometimes we drop the knees straight down, and that is for sure a determinant of high performance in breaststroke. We always want to have a slight angle of the knees as far back as possible, but without obviously the heels breaking the surface. So everyone's going to be slightly different, but typically the best breaststrokers will have more of an angle backwards. So as they recover for the kick and create that drag, it'll be minimized where the water can kind of hit the thighs and come off rather than hit and slow us down by having like the knees dropped straight through. And then again, head down, palms down, streamline right through. Okay. And switch over to the kick. Is there a question in the chat, Dean? I just see a little notification.
Nothing that I see, no. But if someone has a question, just speak up.
Yep. Okay, so this is a video of just a breaststroke kick. Different angles I have from the side as well as the back. So again, the swimmer has knees slightly angled back, heels are just below the surface, so they're still able to apply really good pressure on the inside of the feet. And then there is going to be tension, obviously, on the inside of the knee as they drive the feet back and then connect with the hips and the glutes to move the hips forward. And then finish the kick, and feet should come up a little bit higher, right? The same swimmer I have from the back. I let it run a little bit. There you go. So her knees are just outside the hips. Now, if you are able to have the hip mobility and the knee flexibility to bring the knees in line with the hips and then toes obviously out, that allows that squeeze in and kind of that whip in to apply more pressure. And then if you can connect that with the hip, it creates a really strong breaststroke. Whereas if you haven't done breaststroke in a long time, if you have tight knees, typically depending on your age and kind of activities, I would suggest be very protective as we get back in the pool with your breaststroke. not only just in the intensity. So whenever you do breaststroke kick, let's just do it nice and slow and steady right now and kind of build into higher intensity speed breaststroke, but kind of have a wider knee position as well. And as you get comfortable with that, then slowly, gradually bring the knees in if that's what you choose to do. You can still have a relatively good breaststroke without putting too much strain on the knees with a really, really narrow kick. But if you do choose to have more of a narrow breaststroke kick with the knees in, just do it gradually, progress it really slowly. Okay. I guess I can carry that through. So this is the position where obviously the knees are coming in, the pressure is on the feet, and that's where you typically feel the tension to the medial part of the knee. And the more narrow the knees are, the more of that tension you'll feel.
Amber, we did have a question just regarding the turn, even though you're not doing the turn, but question around the timing of the dolphin kick in the breaststroke turn. I think you can see it maybe with the swimmer you had, the male swimmer.
Yeah, I can go back to that one. Yeah, so a while ago, the rules changed, right? So oh no, I went to the wrong video. Oh, no, I did. I'm just getting confused. I have so many different things open right now. Can you see the swimmer, the breaststroke swimmer?
Yep, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so now we can do the dolphin kick and the pull out before we break the hands. So yeah, this video is meant for the stroke, so it cuts them off a little bit. So because, and like I mentioned, how kind of streamline is the best position we can get into to reduce drag. In order to maximize that that initial dolphin kick on the pullout, we should maintain that streamlined position. So have a small, effective dolphin kick, so we're not changing body position too much. We're just driving ourselves forward through it, but maintain that streamlined position, finish the kick, and then, as you can see, the swimmer, and the moment he finishes the kick there, has an instant of a glide, kind of connects with his core again, and then goes through the pullout. Whereas if you did the kind of traditional pullout like that, and then start your kick, so the dolphin kick, then you have drag from the whole shoulders, right? So just in order to be as effective as you can with the kick, we want to be able to do it in that streamlined position. And you'll carry a lot more distance off the start for sure as you enter the water a little bit faster. But if you do have a strong push from the turn, having a tight streamlined position and a quick dolphin kick can carry you quite far out too before the pullout. Is that good?
I think that was good. Yep, brilliant. You got brilliant. So there you go.
Brilliant, yeah. I wonder if this athlete does a good arm recovery, because again, this is all about reducing drag and breaststroke, right? So as he comes through, you want the hands. Yeah, he does a pretty good job. Hands coming up the body as tight as possible. And then really, he's a little bit early recovering the legs because now he has kind of double drag from the arms and the legs. So keep the legs straight until your hands get to around your face. And then do a really fast leg recovery so that we can just kick straight up into the first stroke. And he's maybe a little bit deep here as well.
It's good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my PowerPoint. Yeah, so anyone kind of looking to improve their breaststroke, because of the masters swimming population, I would never recommend doing stretches for the knees or excessive loading. I don't think it's something I would prescribe for this age population. But again, it's your body and you're welcome to do whatever you want. But the recommendations I'd say is to develop kind of the stability and the strength around the knee. So I have Mina, again, I just pulled these from her YouTube page where she's doing a single leg squat. So that adds a little bit of a stability challenge to the knee in different directions. And then again, connecting with the hip, which is really important for that breaststroke. So that's her doing a rear foot elevated split squat. So anything where it's single leg is really going to challenge the stabilizing parts of the knee. And like controlling the shear force is the next one. So I'll pause that. So you don't necessarily want to directly stress the inside of the knee, but just by doing any kind of lateral movement like the video on the right is kind of a slow way to kind of progress the strength and the inside of the knee. So you could just do lateral lunges. You don't have to do the shuffle and certain things like that. Okay. All right, on to butterfly swimming. So kind of the determinants of butterfly swimming is that we see an athlete that after the breath, we see the head entering prior to the hands. So the head kind of comes through, and again, I'll show you this on video and then gets into this extension. Hand position and stroke path is also very important. In the past, we had seen kind of dropping of the thumbs, pressing out really wide, and then coming in this big kind of keyhole pattern, whereas you still see a bit of a spread out into a catch. We still want to have the palms facing towards your feet the entire time, so that wherever your hands are, you're still in a good position to drive yourself forward. So having your palms always face back. And then strong push phase is actually one thing that Dawn Burton, the coach that I work with the most, really emphasizes with our swimmers. And it's a good way to connect strokes as well. So not only having a long, strong stroke that's not short and just maintaining in that catch-pull position, but carrying that through past the hips. And if you do have a strong push phase, which carries your hands past the hips, then you're typically also accelerating the arm recovery, which connects into the next stroke. So our kind of the entry, having a direct path of the pull and then carrying that into a strong push phase kind of completes those performance points for the butterfly. And let's go straight into the video. Where am I? Fly, stroke, and turn. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to go back to where he took his breath here to explain my first point. So he's taking his breath, does a push phase, kick, arm recovery. And you see the first thing is his head comes down. And then upper arms, fingers. So that's the full extension. A lot of times we'll see the hands and head hit at the same time, where kind of maybe they're taking a longer breath or just slower getting the head down, where athletes tend to get kind of stuck. You don't have that natural flowing connection through the stroke. Or take that breath quick during the push phase and get the head down before the hands enter. And then I know it's a little blurry, but fingertips down and palms facing the feet the entire time. So he's a little bit wide on the catch compared to kind of freestyle, right? We go a little bit wider and then we come under the body closer to the hips here into the push. But the hands should always be facing the feet because that's the direction we want to be pushing the water and obviously driving ourselves forward. Yeah, so I think this stroke you can see is he enters narrow, goes a little bit wider, so the hands separate a little bit, but still into a strong catch position. That's good. And then as he goes into this pull and push, the hands come in a little bit narrower, kind of in line with the hips, and then finish through. Okay. I think he might have done a turn, so I can just show that piece. Okay, so for butterfly, the considerations that I had here is scapular control and endurance. So having the double arm recovery, it challenges kind of the stabilizing muscles of the shoulder a lot more. It's not as easy to kind of do butterfly for long distance, as we know, compared to freestyle. So that scapular control and endurance is something you could probably be working on right now. And I have Mina's video here, and she has blackburns. This is something she programs in with our athletes regularly for either their pre-pull or their activation prior to strength training. So really engaging the posterior of the back, squeezing those scaps, and then getting the long arm still hovering above the ground and then back. And so what I would recommend is think about, if you are flyers, if you say you're doing the 100 fly, how many strokes do you normally do per lap? If it's 10, 12 strokes per lap, I would say do 4 sets of 10 blackburns. How do your shoulders feel right now doing that? Do you fatigue after 10 reps? I know I would, absolutely, because I've just been in front of my laptop for months now. I haven't really done butterfly in probably over a year. But that's a good way to kind of know where you're at when it comes to your shoulder endurance. And then if you do 3 sets or 4 sets, then you're developing that endurance, a shoulder endurance. So then when you get back in the pool, you might be able to handle that butterfly training a little bit more effectively. And then just to get into the positioning for an effective butterfly catch, back to the thoracic spine mobility, but this time an extension. So if you have a foam roller, or if you can just probably roll up a towel, kind of opening up an extension, that T-spine, which we tend to be very rounded, especially on our computers or laptops, all day long, opening up in that extension. And then here's another exercise where you can see he rests his elbows on a table. He kind of has that rounded T-spine here. And then as he drives his chin down towards the ground, he achieves more of a flat or curved T-spine in the kind of stretch or that positioning, that extension we want to achieve. Okay, so a couple of things we can do there. Okay, so I had Dean set up a poll. So I had a couple of kind of curiosities about where we are at as masters swimmers. So I'll release the poll, and it's kind of to get an understanding of, are you breathing bilaterally, or do you prefer to breathe to one side? To get an idea of who does breaststroke kick and finds it uncomfortable at this master's level. And then the last 3 are more kind of practical. With pools being closed, I know most of us are still being quite fit and achieving different activities outside of the pool. So what have you been doing? And then the last question on the poll is, have you been engaging in regular mobility work? So if I can release this, I'll launch it right now. So it should pop up to everyone's screen. I'll give you a minute or 2 to kind of answer them.
No.
Okay, I think everyone's in except one. We'll wait another 30 seconds, and then I think if once I end the poll, it should actually show the results to everyone, so we can kind of just chat about it. And there are a couple coaches here too, right? I know Doug is on, so you might be interested in a couple of these things too.
Trying to cut back in to what would be a sizable lead for Philadelphia.
Hockey game is on.
Okay, I'm just going to end the poll now. Does that sound good? Okay. I wonder if that last person was me. Okay, can everyone see the results here?
Yep.
Okay. So for what is your preferred breathing pattern, I was just kind of curious. It's great to see. So 2/3 of everyone said we prefer to breathe to both sides. So that's amazing. Whereas 6 of you prefer that one side. I'd say that kind of shocks me a little bit. I expected most of us to prefer to breathe always to one side. And there's always a time and a place too, right? So if you train breathing to both sides, bilateral breathing is the best to balance the stroke. And then if you know that breathing to the right is definitely stronger or more powerful because your left side catch is stronger, then you can just use that in your race strategy too. So that's neat. Breaststroke kick is uncomfortable for my knees. This is kind of related to a question we got, and only 6 said yes, so 12 said no. So that's good as well. So again, just as we get back into the pool, I don't recommend sprinting breaststroke right away. Take it slow. Do some stretches in advance, open up the hips and kind of work on that mobility piece. So that was good. And it looks like we're kind of split.
Got to come down a little bit, I think, Amber.
The poll?
No, maybe can I do that?
Yeah, you can do it on your own screen.
Oh, there, I can do it on my own screen. There we go.
So now the pools are closed. 8 of us have kind of just matched that with running, cycling, dryland, maybe some other things going on. And then 10 athletes have reduced fitness activities now that pool's closed. And that's not surprising because we don't have access to anything right now. So for pretty much everyone, I'd say like addressing those that are doing a lot of land work, maybe be more aware if you're doing a lot of running. I know I'm doing a lot of running, like my ankles are tighter, my hamstrings are a lot more tight. I have not done anything overhead in a really long time. So I know getting back into the pool is going to be a lot more challenging. So I'm lucky enough, our Ontario Swim Academy does yoga virtually for our group. So I've been jumping in when I can for those sessions to do more of that mobility piece. So when I do get back in the pool, hopefully I'll be more comfortable reaching above head. And I would recommend the same for those athletes. But for those of you that have reduced your fitness activities, maybe you're just working a lot right now. Again, think about what you can do to kind of prepare your body going into the pool when it does open up again, right? Yep. And then do you engage in regular mobility work? That's shocking. I didn't expect really anyone to say yes at this with this master's group. So 7 of you say yes, whether it's just stretching, yoga, massage. Is there anything else that anyone does that isn't one of those 3? And then 11 obviously say no. So more often than not, we don't really take care of that mobility piece. And I do think that going back in the pool, I think mobility is going to be undervalued. We can do a lot more with that. I'm hoping I can still have I'm going to stop sharing, but I want those results for later.
Well, we're recording this, so it's somewhere.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to finish off here. So just practical application. So yeah, prepare your body to swim again long term. Think about shoulder overhead mobility. So I have this picture here. So proper shoulder is this guy on the right. We see this in all of our strokes where we can reach above, kind of have that neutral back position, core engaged, head in alignment. Lack of mobility and tight shoulders, tight pecs kind of restricts us getting into proper streamline with our hands above head. But then quite often, sometimes we still do it, especially in the pool, but we find other ways to do it, like arching too much in the low back rather than getting the proper extension through our T-spine. So we want to be protective of our shoulders, protective of our low back, and try to open up our T-spine a little bit right now, work on that posture. Rotator cuff strength for shoulder stability and endurance is always going to be huge. Any age, any performance level. Thoracic mobility, I said rotation for freestyle, just for like everyday life, really looking side to side without any discomfort. And then extension is great for swimming. And postural improvements, muscular imbalances. So if your chest is really tight or if you haven't worked your back and your back is a little bit weak, that will be exaggerated when we get back in the pool. So working on balancing our muscle groups right now is going to be very valuable and can put you ahead when it comes to performance in the pool. I just had a couple of videos. I just, again, pulled these from Mina because her whole library of exercises on YouTube it's really directed towards swimmers. So if you're looking for certain things to help you get back in the pool with proper postures, you've got her YTI, Ws, and As here. This is a great one for the rotator cuff, working on that posterior back, and then overhead is huge. And then obviously doing more reps and more sets to work on that endurance. And then I like these ones because it's a good way to work on the core, but in a long position. So walking the hands out. So we're slowly increasing kind of that load overhead without really like adding weight, just our own body weight can be a really good starting point for us. And then even here, swimmers tend to be very weak when it comes to the posterior chain. So swimmers just working on their glutes and their posterior chain can actually improve dolphin kick immediately almost. So this is just a couple that I pulled from her page. So I just wanted to bring it back to her, kind of her talk a couple of weeks ago. Is a lot of valuable points and things you can do right now and on land to improve your swimming. How do I get back? Okay, so yeah, take home notes, prepare your body to swim again and for the long term. So focusing on recovery and joint mobility now and between training sessions is huge. When it comes to training volume, intensity, and definitely technique, just progress slowly. Don't try to change your breaststroke completely in one session. Just think about one thing and gradually make that adjustment for like long-term results. And I highly suggest investing your time in your technique and swimming efficiently, not only for performance, but just for your body and for longevity in the sport. So I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, if you want any videos or references, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Dean. Anyone can kind of connect you to me that way through Swim Ontario. And then I obviously used a lot of Mina's videos and her resources, so I just added her information there if you're interested in that dryland piece and that dryland support.
That was great. That was great, Amber.
Fantastic. Really good.
What I liked about it was that you drew in the stuff that Mina did, how important that mobility, the dryland piece, the preparation stuff does help swimming, and how it relates and intertwines. So that's something I think you covered off the 3 questions that came in earlier. I mean, definitely around the knees. I think you covered off regarding the shoulders, with using your backside a bit more. This one came in around tips for the short swimmers to keep up with those long-limbed, long-body swimmers. And I've always said that long boats do go faster, but the key is to create your long boat. Make your, no matter how long your vessel really is, always strive to be that long. So you want to add anything to that, Amber?
Yeah, for the shorter swimmers, yeah, sometimes you're just out of luck. But like I said in like my very first slide, like when it comes to our top swimmers, like if you're already pretty satisfied with your surface swimming and if you are kind of looking for that next thing to improve, to compete against your other swimmers that are just physically bigger, it's going to be in the skills. It's going to be in the underwater dolphin kick, in the starts and the turns. Those transition pieces are where you're gonna kind of nab those tall guys. When they take a break, you drive past them.
That's right. That's right. You guys will figure it out. But if you always try and think of yourself being longer in the water than you allow yourself, sometimes it will help. Any questions? Any other questions that maybe on top of mind? You can always send one to Amber. And yeah, hopefully everybody will get themselves back to the pool or back to the water. And we know it's a bit of a stretch for some of the Toronto area, but we're hopeful that we start to see that. I know from we're still planning. I'm not sure what the summer will look like when it comes to competition. I think it's all around the gathering piece is still going to be a bit dicey. But anyways, we will have some two open water swim moments that we're going to work on and have. One will be in July. Hopefully that'll be up in the Gravenhurst area, and then one will be in August, late August. So we are working on the open water pieces, and hopefully there's other activities around that. And just to bring little advertisement here, in March we're going to have a session. We'll do a webinar session on swim meets, organizing a swim meet. We know that clubs, some of you have the infrastructure, you belong to an age group club and they have their officials, or you have some partnerships like that. But we're going to try and bring in some of the people who do run Masters meets to try and help as an education piece. That'll be in March. And then one in April, we're going to talk about open water. We're going to open water swimming. We're going to have a few guests, and a couple of them are those crazy ones that do go in the water when it's quite cold, and just talk about open water swimming. I think there's a definitely this coming summer is probably still very much part of the deliverable that you can participate in, and maybe there's an upswing in that. There's always silver linings during this pandemic, and maybe it's leaning towards that open water swimming. There are some modules. Swimming Canada's created an open water swimming module, and obviously the safety aspects, and they've updated their race components and everything else to be more Canadian made. So hopefully we'll see you on the next time. Hopefully we'll start to see people's faces in the water. And by all means, if you have ever any suggestions or whatever, just let us know. So thanks, Amber. Very, very much appreciative. You give a world-class presentation with world-class information. And to the rest of you, thanks for tuning in, and take care of yourselves.